Hello, hello. I was looking at all of your comments. Good morning, everyone. And a gentleman named Franklin checked in and said that he was in the Missouri boot heel. And I read it quickly and I thought, he's in a Missouri brothel? Let him lead the YouTube conversation today. A couple of my listeners from Houston did what I recommended, which is to call Steve Cordasco, both in their second marriage, each with grown children. They don't get along. The kids, parents have considerable assets, worried that there was a dispute that was growing in size. They heard me talk about Steve Cordasco. They made the call. Steve is a part of Mercer Advisors. The estate planning team kicked into gear, put together a plan to help ensure the parents' intentions would be met and family bliss would be sustained. Call Steve Cordasco, 855-558-3500. Get your estate in order before it's too late. Cordasco Financial Network. Steve's a good guy. I talked to him this week. It's a trade name owned by Mercer Global Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Andrew Garrett, Inc., which is not affiliated with Cordasco Financial Network or Mercer Advisors, and client experiences may vary. So let me work in reverse order. I want to tell you what's going to go on my CNN program today with particular emphasis. You saw the thumbnail on something called social capital. I'm eager to try and work out in a more scripted fashion things that I was saying on radio this week about a couple of stories that really grabbed my attention. But working backwards in terms of what today's CNN program will consist of, I'm really excited about this because I saw the final cut, pun intended, for those who know, last night. I sat down with Pink Floyd co-founder, chief lyricist, solo artist Roger Waters. I interviewed him in Philadelphia because he's in Philadelphia for 2 nights of concerts at the Wells Fargo Center. Is that what they call it now? So really interesting because he is a musical genius, and he's like a political madman. And we always have spirited conversations. And wait until you see this. On radio yesterday, I played some of the audio excerpts. But on television today, you're going to see us disagree about Russia, Ukraine, China, the U.S. legacy in World War II, in the context of talking about him really wielding a soapbox in this current concert tour. In other words, it's not like he occasionally gets himself in hot water because he says something that red states find offensive. No. He wears it on his sleeve, and he views his concerts as an opportunity not only to play his music, which is fabulous, but also to advance his political perspective. And he may be wrong in your opinion, but he's got some deep-seated beliefs, and he's consistent. One of the things that comes out, he begins the concert by making an announcement and saying, if you're one of those people who says that you love Pink Floyd's music, but you can't stand Roger's politics, then, get the F out. And then he starts the show. So you know what you're getting. And it's the production values on the interview, hat tip to creative outfit. That would be PJ, Randy and company who assist me with YouTube. They recorded it and they did a sensational job. The setting makes it worthwhile in and of itself. So Roger Waters and yours truly, you'll watch it on CNN today. We think we'll probably release the full interview, which is like 25 minutes long, at some point soon as well. Did you have a summer job when you were a kid? Yeah, of course you did, right? We are of that generation where we were all out there scooping ice cream and flipping burgers. The Biden administration, all of us, I shouldn't say the administration, we got a positive jobs report yesterday. We're at full employment, essentially. And we've entirely recovered in the jobs market from where we were pre-pandemic. So all that went on during the course of the pandemic, the numbers have now reversed themselves. But what's interesting, and I hear this, and I'll bet many of you who are watching me right now can attest to this, a lot of folks are having difficulty hiring for those first entry-level jobs. And a lot of those younger people that they hire, they don't stick around. Can that be traced to the fact that today young Americans are not working the same type of summer jobs that we worked when we were younger. I'm very proud of my McDonald's legacy. Well, Pamela Paul wrote about this for the New York Times and really echoed a column I wrote 10 years ago on the same subject. So we're going to kick it around. She claims that she learned more working outside the classroom than what she learned inside the classroom, and that it benefited her. And I have a solution. My solution is that we need colleges and universities to put out the word that it's okay if you go work a mundane summer job. We're not going to hold it against you. You don't have to save the world. I really enjoyed Congressman Peter Meyer from Western Michigan on yesterday's radio program. He lost a primary on Tuesday, and he lost a primary to a very MAGA candidate. Now, that's not unusual that a MAGA candidate wins a primary against someone to his or her left. What's unusual in this case is that the Republican candidate, Hibbs, I think is his name, who defeated Peter Meyer, was the beneficiary of a $400,000 ad buy by the Democratic Campaign Committee, another of these circumstances where Democrats have sized up a candidate running on the other side of the fence that they perceive to be most vulnerable, and they try and boost that candidate. Same thing that happened in Pennsylvania in the case where Josh Shapiro, his campaign spent money to elevate Doug Mastriano. Okay, Mastriano, the so-called Christian nationalist, I don't know if he accepts that label, was then victorious, and Shapiro now has a commanding lead according to the polls over him. So, maybe in the end it makes sense, but among others, the New York Times finds this strategy repugnant and risky. Repugnant and risky. In other words, like, what happens if these candidates win? And in the case of Meyer in Michigan, Meyer, as a freshman member of Congress, first time in history, cast a ballot to impeach a sitting president from his own party. That had never happened before. The guy was days sworn into office, and all of a sudden January 6th hits. And he's not some left-wing, progressive. The more I heard him, the more I thought he's really in the Jerry Ford mold of the Republican Party. Maybe I had Grand Rapids in my head when I was interviewing him. Okay, so 3 good things, right? Roger Waters, summer jobs, this strategy of trying to take out an opponent that you perceive to be weak on the other side of the fence. Elevate an opponent that you perceive to be weak on the other side of the fence. We're going to get into all that. But as I said on radio yesterday, and when I'm on radio, yes, I have notes and I have clips and so forth in front of me, but it's 3 hours long. And we have a skeletal crew, although, of course, TC is the best, but it doesn't allow me the opportunity to really think through my thoughts and script the program. And probably it would be less interesting if it were. But television gives me that advantage. And so today I'm doing an opening commentary before I welcome Scott Galloway from the NYU Stern School of Business. And the subject, as you saw in the thumbnail leading into this YouTube video, is what the social scientists call social capital. Social capital. Here's how I get into this. 2 stories impacted me this week, and we spent a lot of time on them on radio. And then I at the end of the week, I realized, hey, they're interconnected and they're really significant. One of them you might not think is that big a deal, but it was a story about how the bigger city office buildings are far less occupied on a percentage pro rata basis today than the smaller cities. So that people in San Francisco and New York and LA are not physically back in the workplace the way that they are in, say, Columbus, Ohio. What accounts for that? Is it a cultural thing? Is it a red state, blue state thing? Is it a millennial Gen Xer not wanting a 9-to-5 punch a clock like they saw their parents kind of thing? Is it a commute issue? Like, it's easy to go back to work in Columbus, but all things being equal, if you're in LA, you don't want to be on the road for an hour each way. So if you can work remotely, you'll work remotely. What explains it? We had a really good conversation on that subject. And that's why Scott Galloway is going to be my guest, because he has written and spoken about the return to workplace issue. One of the observations he makes is that it really impacts partnering up, because so many have found their partner in the workplace. So there's that story out there, okay? Then comes a big data dump from Raj Chetty, the economist at Harvard. And he's been able to get this unique access to census information. And what he's done is sort of juxtapose. This is my explanation. It surely wouldn't be his, but he's been able to juxtapose how many. Let me just tell you this one thing, because this is important. Social media relationships. Yeah, he's been able to take a look at a data set of 72.2 million users of Facebook between the ages of 25 and 54, and then assess how far social networks influence economic mobility. And he doesn't know anybody's identity, by the way. Don't get nervous about that. How is he able to chart economic mobility? By looking, among other things, at zip codes. And the big finding, the one that got all the attention, was the finding that the surest way to move from poverty to financial well-being in this country is when the poor have friendships, not associations, not bumping shoulders, but friendships with the wealthy. And this is where the term social capital kicks in. Robert Putnam is someone who's written extensively on the subject. He published a book called Bowling Alone, and talks about how, when we become isolated, we become detached from one another, and we lose that social fabric. Well, when I was reading about this, Raj Chetty and Bob Putnam, who was then a guest on my POTUS program to talk about it, the light bulb went off in my head, and I started to think of Bill Bishop, because Bill Bishop wrote a book on exactly this subject, but from an internet perspective. Let me just look at my notes for a second here, because I want to make sure that I get this right. Yeah, 2009. I wanted to make sure that I had the chronology right. 2009, Bishop writes a book called The Big Sort. And what does he say? He says, well, since the end of World War II, Americans were going their separate ways, and they were participating less in community activities, Elks Club, subscriptions to local newspaper, the VFW, which used to be a point of congregation. Like people drifted away from those type of what had been conventional associations. And then we reconnected in the internet era, but with the advent of connectivity from the internet, now we could find the like-minded on our avocations and our political views, right? So I should have better examples than this, but as a kid, I was into magic. I don't know if your hobby is magic today. You can very easily partner up with, find people who have that type of an interest. Maybe it's needlecraft. I don't know. Whatever your particular area of interest might be, you don't have to go and participate in a meeting in town. You could participate with somebody around the globe who has a similar interest. And political views are the same, in that you can associate with the like-minded while sitting in front of your computer. Okay? I feel like I'm not doing this justice, but hopefully I'll keep it on track. And so I thought of Raj Chetty and Putnam and Bill Bishop. And then I thought of Charles Murray, because Murray in 2013 wrote his book, Coming Apart. And you'll remember this. He was a guest of mine on the program. I hosted him for a live event. He looked at Belmont in Massachusetts, which is a wealthy community. He looked at Kensington in Philadelphia, which is poverty-stricken, white working class, or at least it used to be. And in Coming Apart, what he talks about is how the wealthy of Belmont in whatever community you might live in, think well-to-do gated community, and the Kensington of town, they're no longer overlapping. The people of Belmont don't see the people of Kensington on a typical day. And that has changed because we no longer have social capital. We don't have those coming together events. People don't participate in military service. That used to be the great leveling of the playing field, the great equalizer, everybody treated on the same basis. Okay, Michael, what's this got to do with office buildings in Columbus, Ohio versus Los Angeles? Well, it occurred to me that what we need both to boost some from poverty and to put the country back together is more social capital. And where can you find social capital? Well, when I had the conversation with Bob Putnam, he said, a lot of people find it in church because you're sitting in a pew that has someone who's coming from a different perspective, a different background, a different economic. Could be a church, could be a temple, could be, wherever you're getting whatever your house of worship might be. It might be youth sports, right? The local Little League team. It might be a student exchange program. It might be a whole host of things. It might be mandatory service that doesn't have to be military. And light bulb moment, it's the workplace. Because if we're all now working from home, and we can debate the productivity, that's a side issue, but if we're all now working from home, isn't the workplace a location where you are interacting with people who are unlike you? I mean, even if you're like I worked in for a number of years in a law firm. The lawyers in the law firm were of a certain socioeconomic level, but it takes a lot of spokes to make a law firm work, right? I mean, you're going to think this is a dated concept, but we had a mailroom. We had a mailroom, and maybe there's a car park, and maybe there's a cafeteria, and the cafeteria has workers in it. If everybody's working from home, this is my simple premise. If everyone's now working from home, it's one less place that we're establishing social capital with other Americans. And that's not a good thing because, as Murray wrote in his book titled Coming Apart, or Bishop wrote in The Big Sort, or Raj Chetty in his Data, or Bob Putnam Bowling Alone, bad things happen when we're all living our lives, working, living, and having our kids go to school with the like-minded and the people who look like we look. That's not a good thing. So we need to find ways in which we're all on the same page, more common denominator. Experiences like my father obtained in the Korean War conflict, where he would explain that, day one, same haircut, same uniform, same bunk, same rank. Didn't matter if you were white, black, Indian chief, whatever your religion, what part of the country you came from, equal, even Steven. And through that, we come to understand, and overcome our differences. All right. Look, I delivered it to you unscripted. Obviously, I had the benefit of writing it out for television. So give me the chance to try and explain it on air in a 4-minute clip. But I think you at least now know where I'm coming from. I think this is so big. I think this is so important. And it's one of these things where we get caught up on a day-to-day basis of whatever the issue of the day is. And there are plenty of them. But this is like a big picture thing where the country, I think, is fraying at the ends. And the authors, all smart individuals, are all kind of saying the same thing. And they've captured my attention. So when you read that the high rises in LA and San Francisco are not populated like they are in Columbus, Ohio, I think there's a big picture impact to this that has more to do with whether those buildings are ultimately going to be commercial or residential. This was either really great. I have this feeling like this was like either really great, like, damn, Michael, man, that made me think, or you're like, holy crap, like, what was that word salad? What was that? I don't know. I'll have to read your comments later and figure out which it was. I feel like there was no in between. Either Michael just hit a home run or Michael has just walked back to the dugout having struck out. It's one or the other. Either way, I thank you for hanging with me as I tried to explain that. I'll see you on CNN. Listen to me on POTUS. Please watch these videos. And for God's sakes, subscribe. It's free to Smerconish.com, the newsletter. TC has a podcast this week. I'll listen to it probably later today on a car ride about horseshoe crabs. Of course, she knows how to say the scientific name. All I know is about horseshoe crabs, like when I'm walking on the beach in Ocean City, New Jersey, I don't want to step on one because they got that like pointy thing coming out. Like all I can imagine is like that doinking into my foot. All right, I'm done. See ya. Thank you. Adios.